Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to be doing another unboxing. We have a few NG and Gemini models to unbox today, so with that being said, we're just going to go ahead and get started. So starting off here, we have this Southwest Airlines Boeing 737-800 in the California 1 color scheme. Of course, Southwest at the moment, they're repainting a lot of their state color schemes onto the Dash 800. This one was previously painted on a 737-700, but now, as you can see, it's painted on a Dash 800, so that's going to be a really cool model. Next up, we have the Gemini Jets JetBlue Embraer E190. This aircraft has been quite a rare one to collect for a very long time until Gemini Jets released this model. I've wanted one of these for probably over a decade at this point, but I just haven't been able to get one. Of course, these used to fly into both Dallas and Baltimore as well, but now they're only flying into Reagan at this point, but I'm still glad that we finally have a JetBlue Embraer E190 in my collection. Next up, adding to my fleet of A400s, we have the new Gemini Max Turkish A400M, which is of course going to make a great addition to my fleet of A400s that I already have. We then have two new Alaska models. So starting off here, we have this Alaska Boeing 737 MAX 8 in the regular color scheme, and then to go along with this, I also have the Alaska Boeing 737 MAX 8 in the Honoring Those Who Serve color scheme. These are my first MAX aircraft in the Alaska fleet that I have in my collection, which is a type of aircraft that I drastically need just because the Maxes do fly into DC quite a bit. I do also, of course, want to get the Max 9, and then when eventually they have it in their fleet, the Max 10 as well, but we will get them in the future, I'm sure. And then next up, a new airline that I've wanted for a very, very long time. We have the Allegiant Boeing 737 MAX 8-200. Of course, the Dash 200 is a compact variant of the 737 MAX 8, but I just can't believe we finally have an Allegiant aircraft, because of course Allegiant's flying to both Dallas and Baltimore, mainly, and of course at the moment the A320 and the A319, but increasingly in the future the 737 MAX as well. So that's going to be added to the collection. And then moving from a very new aircraft to a very old aircraft, we have this NG American Chrome 767-200. I don't actually have a Dash 200 variant of the 767 in my collection yet, and I've wanted one of these for a very long time, so I'm happy to finally have this in my collection. And then finishing off today's unboxing, we have not one but two of the new NG United 767-400s. Of course, I also have the one that was released by Gemini Jets. It's interesting that both NG and Gemini Jets released these near enough at the same time, despite the fact that we have been after the 767-400 for years at this point. But I'm just glad that I finally have the 767-400 in my collection. And so with that being said, we are going to go ahead and start off with this NG Southwest Airlines Boeing 737-800 in the California 1 color scheme. So Southwest have recently announced a retirement date for their NG, or their next generation 737, so that is all of their 737-700s and their Dash 800s. They will be retired in 2031, which of course is still quite a way from now, but it is only 6 years, which is kind of scary to think about. But of course these are going to be retired and replaced with both the 737 MAX 8 and the MAX 7. Southwest don't actually have any MAX 7s in their fleet at the moment. They currently have 205 of these Dash 800s in their fleet, and then they have 307 MAX 7s on order and 405 MAX 8s on order. Of course, a lot of the MAX 8s are already in service. I would probably say around 200. I'm not exactly sure how many they have in service. 200, maybe going towards 300, I would say they have in service. And the MAX 7s are due to enter the Southwest fleet in 2026. But of course, this aircraft will have a further 6 years of service before it is eventually retired. And of course, this is one of my favorite state liveries, I would say, just because of the how colorful this one is. So Southwest don't have a state livery for every single state in America. I think that would be really cool to see, but unfortunately they don't do that. They just have a state livery for all the states in which Southwest have a hub. So for example, Baltimore is a hub for Southwest, so they have a Maryland 1 color scheme. And so here represented we have the state of California with the very iconic Californian flag. So California is the 31st state of America. It gained independence from Mexico in 1850, and the current California flag that we have today was introduced in 1911. Of course, it's quite an unusual flag, I would say. It's got a red stripe along the bottom, and then in the middle, of course, you have a grizzly bear standing on a patch of grass, and then you have a lone star as well on the flag just in the top left corner. So on this aircraft, as you can see, it's just up by the fuselage, but other than that, this is of course just a regular 737-800. So at the front there we have the cockpit, we have the L1 door, no Southwest titles on the fuselage of the aircraft, but we do have it on the tail there, and then of course the regular Southwest colors on the tail as well. Overall, this is going to be a pretty cool aircraft to add to my long fleet of Southwest state liveries. And next up here we have the new Gemini Jets JetBlue Embraer E190. As mentioned, I've been after one of these for a very long time. These used to fly into Dulles from JFK and Boston. They also used to fly into Baltimore from Boston as well, but unfortunately JetBlue have really downscaled their operations into DC, so now they only fly into Washington Reagan, which is pretty sad. But the Embraer E190 currently is still the most used aircraft in Reagan, but with this aircraft retiring later this year, it's looking like the A220 will be the aircraft to replace this one. JetBlue have operated a total of 38 of these Embraers over their lifespan. Of course, they were actually the launch customer of the Embraer E190, so it's quite significant that they are finally retiring them. But JetBlue are of course transitioning to an all Airbus fleet, so retiring these Embraers is the last step they need to take towards having an all Airbus fleet. Of course, they have 100 A220s on order, which of course are going to be the aircraft to replace this Embraer, but then they also have the A320, the A321 and the A321neo, all of which are going to receive new liveries pretty soon. Of course, the Embraers aren't going to receive that new livery just because they're retiring soon, so why would JetBlue waste the money on repainting all of them? So yeah, it's pretty sad to see this aircraft go, but it has just been an absolute staple of the DC area for so many years. And on top of that, come to think of it, I don't think I have an Embraer E190 in my collection yet. I have an E170, an E175, even an E195, but no E190. And so here we have the aircraft. Starting off at the front, we have that Embraer nose there, with the windows, the L1 door there, the JetBlue titles, the blue engines, the blue winglets. We have the Wi-Fi box on the top. JetBlue were actually the first airline in the world to introduce in-flight Wi-Fi, so that's quite a significant bit on the JetBlue aircraft. We then have the registration and their newer Embraer tails here. They are fairly new, of course. They used to use the older JetBlue colors, but this is the newer JetBlue design on the tail of the Embraer here. And yeah, it's just a really cool aircraft, and I love the fact that I've finally got one of these in my collection. The only other Embraer E190 I would love to get now is the British Airways Cityflyer Embraer E190. So hopefully with Gemini Jets releasing this one, maybe we'll get a British Airways E190 soon. And next up here we have this Gemini Jets Turkish A400M. The A400 is one of my favorite cargo, military cargo aircraft, I should say. So I just had to get this one. Unfortunately, I have seen inside the box, and this aircraft has arrived broken, which is very unfortunate. I buy my models from the aircraft model store. If you want to purchase any models from them, the link is in the description of all of my videos, and they did give me a 30% refund if I was willing to keep the model. But I don't know if you can see there, but the The props are bent back, unfortunately, and as well this this wing is loose, which is a real big shame because I love this mold of the A400. I do think I could probably fix the wing. I mean, that's just going to take some glue and that'll be fine. It's just these props that I think are going to be a little bit more difficult to try and fix. But I'm going to give it a go, I reckon. And so here we have the aircraft. As I mentioned, the A400 is one of my favorite aircraft. It just looks so cool. It's like if a C-17 and a C-130 had a baby, that would be the A400. I just think it looks so cool. It's got that kind of balance, and I love, it's probably one of the largest turboprop aircraft that exist. I just think it looks really, really cool. Turkey have 10 of these in operation, and they started operating them in April of 2014. So they've been operating these for over 10 years now, which is crazy. To me, the A400 still seems in my head like a brand new aircraft, but it is over 10 years old at this point, which is, you know, nuts to think about. But Gemini Jets have now released a Royal Air Force A400. That was the first one they released. A Luftwaffe A400, a French A400, and now the Turkish one. But I've mentioned this before, I don't know why we haven't had a Spanish A400M, as Spain are actually one of the leading operators of the A400, and as well, Spain is actually where these are built. All of the military Airbus stuff is usually done down in Spain. The A330 MRTTs, they're built down in Spain as well. So while all of the commercial stuff is done in Toulouse and Hamburg, the military stuff is down in Spain. And as mentioned, Spain are the third largest operator of the A400. I believe Germany's at the top. I think France is just under Germany, and then Spain is under France, and then the UK is the fourth largest operator, but of course the UK also operate the C-17 as well, and I believe the UK are actually set to order more as well. I'm not really sure how that's going to go though. But the other country's A400 that I would love to see released is the Kazakhstan A400. I've been to Kazakhstan twice. I love that country, and they are one of the only non-European countries to order the A400. I believe Malaysia have ordered a couple, and I believe Indonesia as well, but Kazakhstan are again one of the only countries that operates the A400. They've ordered two, and the really interesting thing about the Kazakhstan A400 is, as you can see by this one, this is sort of a matte color when we're used to unboxing passenger aircraft that are more glossy. The Kazakhstan A400s are actually painted in a gloss paint. Now the matte paint that's used on, of course, this Turkish A400 and practically all the A400s is representing a special paint that's used on the A400 to, it's like a radar absorbent paint. It's the same sort of stuff used on the F-35 to dampen the radar signature of the aircraft. Of course, an aircraft like the A400, you're not gonna completely make this stealth, it's just too huge. But of course, adding that paint to the aircraft can limit the size of the radar signature produced by this aircraft. But Kazakhstan, whether it's due to money or whatever, didn't opt for that. They have opted for a gloss paint, which is the same, of course, used on civilian aircraft, which is really interesting. It's the only A400, or the two that they've ordered are the only A400s ordered without that radar absorbent paint. And on top of that, the Kazakhstan A400s are the only A400s fitted without a mid-air refueling probe that you can see on the front of this one. So I think it would be really unique and really cool to see the Kazakhstan A400s released by Gemini Jets. So I think in the future, I mean, it's cool that I've got one from the UK, France, Germany and Turkey, but in the future the two that I would want to get is the Kazakhstan A400 and also the Spanish A400 as well. And then after that, I'm not really too fussed. Of course, there are other countries that operate them. Luxembourg have one, Belgium have a few. As I mentioned before, Malaysia and different countries, so yeah, I'm not too fussed about them, but if I can get a Spanish one and a Kazakhstan A400, that would be fine. But with that being said, this aircraft is going to look really good next to my existing A400s in my collection. Next up, adding to my increasingly sizable Alaska fleet, we have this Alaska Boeing 737 MAX 8. This one is in the plain livery, of course, and as I mentioned, this is going to be my first MAX variant in the Alaska fleet. But then along with that, we also have the Honoring Those Who Serve 737 MAX 8 as well. And so if you can see these aircraft in the blinding sun there, we have the two Alaska 737 MAX 8s. Alaska don't have many of the 737 MAX 8s on order. They only have 20 on order, whereas for the MAX 9 and the MAX 10 they have a lot more on order. They have 80 MAX 9s on order, and then they have 103 MAX 10s on order. So the MAX 9 and the MAX 10s are going to make up the bulk of the future Alaska fleet. So here on the left we have the regular color scheme on the MAX 8, and then on the right we have the Honoring Those Who Serve 737 MAX 8. Now I've actually flown the Honoring Those Who Serve livery, but on the Dash 800 variant of the 737, and I flew that one from Anchorage up to Barrow. And that trip up to Alaska made me absolutely fascinated with how Alaska Airlines operates up in Alaska. Of course, we all know them for their lower 48 service from one coast to another. Of course, they have hubs in Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and then they operate, you know, down the west coast and then across the US to destinations on the east coast as well. But it's these services up in Alaska that really interest me, and they basically keep the state of Alaska alive. Of course, Alaska is so far north that the ocean is frozen for half of the year, so a lot of the northern towns you can't get boats into, and then the road network in Alaska is just incredibly just not there. It's non-existent. Of course, they have roads into Anchorage and then up to Fairbanks, but other than that, a lot of these smaller towns don't have roads connecting them to anywhere. So Alaska Airlines really keeps these people in Alaska connected. I mean, there's one destination called King Salmon. The whole population of this town you could fit on 2 Boeing 737s, which is insane, but Alaska still operate that route. And so ever since that trip, I've been fascinated with Alaska, and I've wanted to increase the size of my Alaska connection. And both of these aircraft look absolutely beautiful. Of course, this one on the right here, I don't know if you can see, it almost looks like there's a hair on the aircraft, and I thought that at first, but unfortunately that is some of the printing or the decals or whatever they use to build this model. It's kind of gone wrong, and you can kind of see a bit of a line on the aircraft there, which, you know, it's such a tiny detail. I'm not going to make a fuss of it. I'm just going to include it in my collection, but that's just a bit of a shame. And then next up here we have a brand new airline into the collection. We have Allegiant. So I've wanted Allegiant into my collection for ages because, of course, now they operate into both Dulles and Baltimore. Of course, primarily on the A319s and the A320s, but the Gemini Jets mold of the A319 and the A320 is just atrocious. So if NG were to release an Allegiant A319 and A320, I will go for those. But for now, we're just stuck with this 737 MAX 8-200. So Allegiant are a fairly large low-cost airline in the US, and they are low cost in every aspect of how they operate, even ordering aircraft. So of course, at the moment, Allegiant have their A319s and A320s in service, so you would think it would make sense for them to move to the A320neo. Because of course the maintenance is the same, the pilots at Allegiant could fly the same or similar types of aircraft, so it's very odd for an airline to move from Airbus to Boeing like this. However, Allegiant ordered the 737 MAXs during the groundings of the 737 MAXs when Boeing were going through all of those issues, because Boeing were offering deeply discounted prices on their 737 MAXs. So Allegiant bought these aircraft for an absolute steal. And they came to a deal with Boeing. They ordered 24 737 MAX 7s, which will of course come into their fleet later on, and 26 of these 737 MAX 8-200s. And so with that being said, we are going to go ahead and open this aircraft. Of course, when they eventually get to their MAX 7s, or we get a release of an A320 or A319 from NG, I will also be getting those. But for now, we have this 737 MAX 8-200. And here we have the aircraft. Now, for my British viewers, you will be fairly familiar with this livery already, as Jet2 have been known in the past to operate Allegiant aircraft, notably the 757. During the summer months, when of course air travel in the UK is at its highest, a lot of low-cost carriers like Jet2 will lease aircraft just for the summer months to make the most of that summer travel. And so back in the day on the 757, Jet2 would actually lease Allegiant 757s. They would fly them from the US over to the UK, and then they would spend the summer in the UK operating those flights down to Spain and Portugal Portugal and all of these holiday destinations. So you would actually see Allegiant aircraft in the UK operating as Jet2 aircraft, which I think is really cool. Of course, whether that will happen for their 737 MAXs, I don't know. That would be pretty cool to see, but we don't know what will happen in the future. And as well, another connection this aircraft has to Europe is the fact that this is a 737 MAX 8-200. So the -200 variant of the 737 MAX 8 is a ultra condensed variant of the MAX 8. So what it means is they've crammed so many seats onto this aircraft that they've had to add another emergency exit. So that is what that door is there that you don't see on regular 737 MAX 8s. In fact, let me grab the Alaska one. So this on the top is a regular MAX 8, and you can see that there is no emergency exit where there is one on the fuselage of the Allegiant aircraft. And the only other airline other than Allegiant to operate the 737 MAX 8-200 is of course Ryanair. But overall, I love the Allegiant livery. I think it's really bright, it's really prominent, and it's also really clean as well. I really do like it. Of course, you've got the Allegiant titles at the front here on the white fuselage, and then going back here, I think a lot more airlines need to make the most of this type of design, where you don't just have a colourful tail, you have a colourful second half of the fuselage, and we have orange, yellow and blue there, and the blue engines as well. It's just a really colourful aircraft, and I cannot wait to add this into some updates. And next up here, moving to a very old aircraft, here we have the American Chrome Boeing 767-200. The 767-200s are all pretty much retired these days. American retired theirs in, well, they retired the American ones in 2014, but then they took on some more 767-200s from US Airways, and the US Airways ones, even though they were being operated by American, were then retired in 2015. Which is, of course, when they were finally retired completely from the American fleet. But this one is the American Chrome livery 767-200. American operated these from 1982 onwards. They had 13 of the 200s in service and 27 of the 200 ERs in service. And I believe similar to the 777-200s today in the fleets of like United, the -200s would serve domestic services, and then the 200 ERs would serve international services overseas and various things like that. This is again similar to my Air India A350. This is one of the premium models from NG, so it's wrapped in this film. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it open, and here we have the aircraft. I am going to use a cotton glove for this just because these chrome color schemes are really easy to get fingerprints all over. So I don't want to do that. And yeah, so here we have the beautiful looking 767-200. And so here we have the aircraft. This is such a classic aircraft to have. Of course, unfortunately, I'm going to mention it. This was the type of aircraft used on 9/11, operating as American Flight 11. This was, I believe, the first aircraft to fly into the World Trade Center. The second one, of course, was the same type of aircraft as this, just operated by United. It was in the United battleship grey colour scheme. And then of course the one that went into the Pentagon was the American 757-200, and then the one that crashed in Pennsylvania was the United 757-200, again in battleship grey. As well as this, on a lighter note, this is also the aircraft used in Home Alone 2. This is the aircraft I believe Kevin takes to New York from Chicago. So this aircraft is full of sort of 2000s and 21st century memories, I guess you could say. But it does look really, really cool. Of course, the wings look like they've just been taken straight off of a 767-300. The wings look almost identical, and the engines as well. But it's so weird to see a 767 this short and this stubby. It does look really weird to me just because I'm not used to seeing a -200. I mean, I remember these from my childhood, but I just, you know, it's been a very long time since I've actually seen a 767-200. But yeah, this aircraft is going to make a great addition next to my other American Chrome color scheme aircraft. And then last but not least, here we have the NG United Boeing 767-400 in the new United livery. So of course the -200 of the 767 is the smallest variant of the 767. This one is the largest, so you can really get a sense of scale here. And so again, in the blinding sun, here we have them. United don't have many of these in operation. They only have 16 of these. However, they operate a lot out of Washington, Dallas. They operate some really interesting routes over to Honolulu, Sao Paulo, a lot of different destinations in Europe as well. And so, of course, I believe these are mainly operated from Dallas and Newark. So these operate a lot of flights out of Dallas, despite United themselves not actually having that many. Of course, these are in the same family as the 767-300, the 757-300, and the 757-200, all of which are unfortunately going to be retired in 2030. The Dash 400s and the Dash 300s, or the 767s I should just say, will be replaced by the 787s, and then the 757s will be replaced by the A321neos. So of course we've got another 5 years of service with these aircraft left until they're gone. So if you want to fly on one of these, you've got another half a decade left until they're gone for good. So make the most of them. But apart from that, that does conclude today's unboxing. I think unlike what I usually do, where I get them all in one shot together, I'm actually going to show where they're going in my collection now. So here joining my Southwest collection, we have the California 1 aircraft. Here joining my JetBlue fleet, we have the Embraer E190. Joining my ever-growing fleet of A400s, we have the Turkish A400. And then my Alaska collection, which is getting pretty big, we have both of the MAX 8s here in a row down there. Joining the low-cost carriers here, we have the Allegiant 737 MAX 8-200. Joining my retros here, we have the American 767-200. And then joining my United fleet, we have the 767-400s. And with that, I want to thank you very much for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.